We have Dr. Matthias, the API strategist at Software AG, to share about everything AI, what AI folks need to know now. Thank you.
Hi, welcome to API Days Hong Kong. My name is Matthias Biehl. I work as API strategist at Software AG. And today we will talk about the intersection of AI and APIs. Just one letter difference, but two exciting technologies that are very powerful, especially if used together. And in today's talk, which is a recorded talk, you can still reach out and interact with me, especially on the platform LinkedIn, right? So I've put the QR code here on this slide and also on the last slide. So you can reach out, message me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and let's keep the conversation going there. Thank you very much for reaching out. Okay, now let's get into the topic, AI and APIs. It's actually generative AI and these large language models that have inspired the world's imagination, right? They came out end of last year with a new version, even though it has been around for much longer. And now all of a sudden, everyone is inspired and sees the possibilities of this technology. And now everyone goes around and thinks, what does this mean for us? What does this mean for me personally, for my work, for the company I work for, and for the products that we're building? If you are building digital products, then probably someone has already approached you and said, let's put that generative AI into our products, right? So companies see themselves now challenged to add generative AI to their digital products, right? And companies might also ask themselves, and people working at these companies might ask themselves, is AI just a temporary hype that will then go away very soon, like some other hypes, or is it here to stay? And in this talk, we'll look into that aspect as well. Well, then, practically, how shall we embed AI into our digital products, right? We'll look into that as well. How can we make our processes more efficient with AI? Yeah? Some people might want to build products. Other people might want to improve internal processes at their company using generative AI technology. And both of them will find LLMs and generative AI useful in some respects. So how can you actually do that and achieve it? Do you need an AI research lab? Is the next question, right? If you use AI, we're used to think, hey, you need to have your own AI research lab. We'll look and revisit that question. And then the big question is, of course, what is the general relationship between AIs and APIs? We'll find out during this talk, and I will give you some architectural patterns and some guidelines for how you can think about this relation between AI and APIs, more like a framework, and then some very practical examples as well to illustrate that. And that will help you think about what will your AI and API strategy look like. Now, the first question is AI just another hype? Well, and here we can look at a very interesting methodology. This is the hype cycle from Gartner. And the hype cycle is basically about expectations. So on one axis, you can see the expectations about a new technology. And on the other axis, you can see several time phases, basically. It's a timeline on the x-axis. And the basis for this hype cycle, why we talk about hype, is actually that we have some new technology and that is so advanced that it is indistinguishable from magic. And this is a quote actually from Arthur Clarke. He is a science fiction author, and he's right about all of these technologies that make it through the hype cycle. They are close to magic, and I think with generative AI in general, this is true, right? Everyone who has tried that will say, hey, it's almost impossible that a computer can act so human-like. Well, in this hype cycle, you see different phases. There's the innovation trigger, where this new technology gets introduced. Then we have the peak of inflated expectations. This is where generative AI and large language models are right now, right at this top of the expectation. Everyone expects a lot from those technologies. What follows is then a fall in the expectations, where we go through the disillusionment phase. People say, oh, this is probably not going to work. And then after that comes the slope of enlightenment. So slowly people figure out where to use and when to use the new technology in the right way. And then we come to the plateau of productivity, and the next innovation is going to come along to lift the plateau of productivity even higher after that, right? Now we can overlay another very interesting technology development model on top of the hype cycle. And this is the technology adoption life cycle, where we say there are several types of customers who like technology, who use technology. There are first the innovators. It's a small fraction, but they use new technology because they think it's cool to use new technology. The next one are the early adopters. And the early adopters, they're okay with the technology not being always reliable. And they are okay with seeing a technology where the potential is clearly there, but it doesn't deliver all the time. So these early adopters typically are 15% together with the innovators. They drive the new technology. Now, what you also see there is a gap. There is a gap between the early adopters and then the next type of customer, the next segment, which is the early majority. The early majority needs proof for this technology to work. And they're also a much larger market segment. Then comes the late majority, another very big market segment, and then the laggards, which are only going to do it when everyone else has done it already. So you can see how the hype cycle and the technology adoption curve, both on a timeline, kind of overlap. And where we are at with the generative AI right now is probably somewhere between the innovators and the early adopters. Now, when we look at the market share that a new technology can get, then we overlay the technology adoption curve with this typical S-curve, where we see the market share rise from 0% in the very beginning when a new technology comes out, to 50%, right, when the early majority has already joined, and then to 100% in the end, ideally, when also all the laggards have followed and used this technology. Now we can look at a couple of these S-curves of this market share that has been reached by other technologies, right? So here is something from the New York Times, an historical overview of technology being used and how the market share has developed. For example, for the telephone, you can follow this dashed red line here all the way from the left, which has a very slow increase, right? So until we have reached maybe 50%, this is more than 50 years. But then you can look at other technologies which reach 50% much, much quicker. For example, you can see the black line, which is the refrigerator. And the more you go to the right, the more current these technologies are, the more you see that these technologies get steeper and steeper. So market share gets reached much quicker. Good. So how do these new technologies in our area, AI and API, stack up against the historical technology developments? And there you can see APIs, right? So APIs maybe started somewhere in the 2000s. And according to Gartner in 2022, 98% of companies have internal APIs and 80% have external APIs. So it's somewhere there in the area of 80 to 90% of companies that have APIs. Of course, you can still improve those APIs. Just because you have them doesn't mean you have reached the end of the maturity, but at least There is some technology or some companies that use technology, and the rates are in the 80 to 90% range. Generative AI, on the other hand, has a much slower but very, very steep increase in market share. So here I have some numbers for ChatGPT in US and Europe, where 8.2% of employees in March this year already have used and experimented with ChatGPT. So this is very, very steep increase in market share for those technologies. So my question to you is now, well, we've seen this is maybe a technology that's in the hype cycle, but which has some very interesting properties from a market share perspective. So companies and customers really want to use it. Otherwise, they wouldn't start using it so heavily. So how do companies react to it, and how do companies leverage it in their own processes and in their own products? The first idea which we have around AI is always you need an AI research lab, right? So who has an AI research lab? Maybe the biggest companies, right? The biggest companies in the world, they have an AI research lab and they're working on AI. But what about the small companies? The many, many small companies that maybe don't have an AI research lab. Is this AI hype now out of reach for them? Well, the argument here is that with API technology, you don't need an AI research lab. And I'm going to show you here a small video that illustrates this, where you have here the AI or the LLM, the large language model, which is this complicated white thing here. And the API is a box, a brown box. And what this AI researcher here does, and these might be a couple of big tech companies that create those AI LLMs, is they just put this complicated technology into this brown box, into the API box. And from then on, you only need to interact with the API. You only need to interact with a well-known interface, a technical interface that every developer basically can learn how to use. So this is the situation we're in. And that's why I say you don't need an AI research lab in order to use AI technology. It's true democratization of AI, right? And now everyone can use AI. Big and small companies can use AI via APIs that make it so readily available and accessible to everyone. You have a division of work, right? There are the people who are developing the AI and researching on the AI. They're looking inside the box and optimize that. And the rest of us, or the majority of people, they don't need to look into box. They just use this box as a black box, so to say, and just put it into their solutions. What this also means is that now you don't necessarily need to be good at AI. What you need to be good at is using APIs. Now let's look into the question of what the relation between APIs and AI is, and also what the architectural patterns are that are relevant here. So we know APIs are really good for connecting distributed systems, right? That's what they're good at. They're connecting systems. Now AI, what is AI good at? Well, AI is mimicking human behavior or human intelligence, right? Good. So those two technology, what do they have to do with each other? So if AI is mimicking human intelligence, then we have to say human intelligence doesn't really exist only in the brain. We always depict intelligence as a brain, but actually it's the interaction between the environment and the brain, right? So there's, for example, the sensors, the eyes that need to interact with the brain to get input from the environment. There's also the ears to get input from the environment. There's the hands to act based on the ideas that we develop in the brain, right? So they need to be connected, right? The intelligence in the brain needs to be connected to the sensors and to the actors. So there you already see we need connection. We need connection and we need intelligence. So AI tries to mimic human intelligence. That's great. But what are the eyes? What are the ears? And what are the hands? Well, first of all, let's look at the eyes. What are the eyes? And what are the ears in artificial intelligence? Well, we have input coming in from the outside world, from the environment in which the artificial intelligence is living, just as the brain is living in an environment, in a physical or social environment, right? So the AI is living in a digital environment, and it gets information about this environment via an API. The API is connecting to the outside world. And this can be prompting, right? So you give input and you prompt the AI to respond based on the data it has been trained on. And the second option is also to train the data. Yeah? For training for training the AI model, you also need to have it interact with the environment. And that's also where an API can help. So having the connection between AI and APIs here is very clear. To illustrate that point, I've brought some code, and this code here is based on ChatGPT, but I'm sure any other type of AI model that you're using will also have comparable APIs. So what you see here is a curl call to ChatGPT or to OpenAI's AI API. And here's a prompt, right? And the prompt is, say this is a test. And this comes in via an API call. Now the output is, of course, a JSON response to that API call. And you can see here, for example, in the content field, very nested, very deep here inside this JSON structure, this is a test. So you can see here the interaction between the AI and the API. Yeah, the API is at the front end. Now we have another type of connection that I haven't talked about so far, and that is the connection between the brain and the hands, right? And this is a different type of connection that we need. Now it's all about output. Before, it was about input. The ears and the eyes, they are for input. Now we need to act based on the ideas that we have. And symbolically here I represent this by the hands. But what are the hands for the artificial AI? Yeah. For the artificial AI, this needs to interact with its digital environment, and it does this via APIs. It needs to change something in this environment. For example, send an email, make a payment, right? And this is another type or another pattern where AI and API has an intersection. And I'm also going to show you that this is not just something theoretical, but this actually exists also on the example of ChatGPT. But again, if you use other AI models, then you will probably see similar concepts there as well. So in ChatGPT, you have this idea of a ChatGPT plugin. And a ChatGPT plugin, here there's only a short list of plugins available yet, but there's probably more to come. You can think about, and it's like an app running on top of the AI platform. And it can go out and do something. For example, book your travel, or it can go out and do an integration for you. Let's look at the code here. What you need in order to build this interaction where the AI calls the API, you need to have a short descriptor, a manifest file, where you say what this API is all about. It's here. Then the second part is, of course, the OpenAPI specification. Yeah, we all know this, the technical specification of the API. And the third component to this is then the implementation of the API. And if you have these three components, you can make the AI call the API based on a certain type of interaction that you have with trigger words. It can go out and call the API. And again, here the AI is like a platform. You have the mobile phone, which is a platform, Android and iOS. This is your platform. And then you have applications running on top of it. These ChatGPT plugins are like your applications. There's also a plugin store, just like your app store on your phone. And the plugins consist of an API, specification and implementation, plus this manifest file or this descriptor. So what I've shown you are two architectural patterns, AI and API application architectural patterns. The first one is where the API is used for getting data from the environment to the AI system. Prompting and training is typical use cases for this. The next pattern we've looked at is where the AI goes and reaches out into the digital environment to trigger some action, to do something, or to get some real-time data. And that's the second pattern. Now, with those two patterns, you can do something interesting. You can play with these patterns. These are going to be very interesting patterns for building applications, complex applications out of. Right? It's not going to stay that simple as we have seen so far. But you can think about these patterns like building blocks, like your toolbox that you build applications of the future out of. And you have a canvas. And on this canvas, you can arrange several instances of these patterns. And together, they're going to form your application. For example, you have here some regular application logic that goes out and calls an API to an AI. And this AI is then also going to reach out to trigger some action via another API, or some other action via another API, or you get the picture, right? This AI can connect to a lot of different APIs to get some complex work or some complex task done. And we already see this in practice, that this type of interaction will probably become much more dominant. We see, for example, tools in the open source space like AutoGPT, LangChain, or Flowwise AI that already go into this direction where these patterns are going to be arranged between AI and APIs. If you think that was an interesting talk, then I invite you to reach out to me to continue the discussion on APIs, your entry ticket to the AI ecosystem. My name is Matthias Biehl, API strategist. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Please connect, follow, and also write your own messages there. I really want to interact with you and look forward to continuing the discussion. Thank you for API Days Hong Kong for inviting to this session. Have a good day.
Thanks, Dr. Matthias. Now we have the next talk.
The API Connect Hong Kong 2023 conference is powered by bNovelty Limited. Check out more API-related education content on bnovelty.com or apidays.hk for more information.